And welcome to Liberty.me Live. I'm your host, Mike Reid, and this is Scotch and Scholars. Tonight, we're here with Walter Block, and we're going to talk about property rights on Mars. Now, Dr. Block, if you don't know, professes at Loyola University, and he's probably the most prolific liberty academic today in terms of journal articles and not to mention books in the fields of economics and law and libertarian theory. It's really astonishing. He is also, this is lesser known, he's also an avid racquetball, ping pong, and skilled chess player. So if you want to really get to know Walter Block, you should go and challenge him on those matters as well as on matters of libertarian theory. Walter, it's great to have you back.
Thanks for having me on your show. It's always wonderful, and I look forward to being with you tonight and in the future.
Great. So tonight I want to talk about property rights on Mars. And now there's a recent blockbuster book and film out called The Martian. And you should know, audience, that this episode may contain lots of spoilers. Now, the book and film are pretty similar, and the basic plot is that a team of astronauts goes to Mars just to check it out like regular NASA astronauts, and there's a disastrous emergency on Mars, and all of the astronauts leave. They all get back in their spaceship, and they fly home to Earth, except one guy. Mark Watney, here played by the excruciatingly handsome Matt Damon, is the astronaut who gets stranded, left behind on Mars. He's there on a barren, lifeless world, and he spends the rest of the story struggling to make use of his environment to survive and get back home. Now, it seems to me that in a story like this, there are three kinds of interesting questions that are raised for a Rothbardian or Hoppian or Blockian theory of property rights. Number one is the basics. Is it okay for this stranded astronaut to do whatever he wants with anything on Mars? Can he just really claim ownership over anything he needs to on the planet? How much belongs to him? I mean, the guy spends a lot of time driving around Mars and picking up stuff and extracting chemicals from the atmosphere, all kinds of things to survive. So that's one thing I want to do. I want to do the basics. Second is the question about abandonment and thievery. All the other astronauts leave their stuff behind. They leave their books, they leave their clothing, they leave food behind, and he ends up taking all their stuff. He eats all their food, he cuts up all their old clothing to make new spacesuits out of it, and whatever else he wants to do to survive. And I wonder, is that theft? I mean, is he really robbing from them? And third, and maybe this reflects on the prior two, is there like a lifeboat situation exemption for a property rights theory? That is there some kind of extreme life or death situation where you're stranded on Mars and like the regular rules of property rights don't apply because you need to do whatever matters of thievery or vandalism are required to survive? So there's like three layers I want to get into, Walter.
Yes, sounds good. Let me give you some background on this. The reason that this interests me is my most recent book is 2 books ago or 3 books ago was privatizing roads and streets and highways.
Right.
The most recent book that just came out last week is privatizing oceans, rivers, and lakes. And the third in this trilogy of privatizing stuff, my motto is if it moves, privatize it. If it doesn't move, privatize it. And since everything moves or doesn't move, privatize everything. The third book in this trilogy is going to be how we and why we should privatize the moon, Mars, the space race, the space probes and stuff like that. So this Martian thing fits right in with my most recent research.
Oh, fantastic. I didn't know we were so close to the privatizing space book. I knew that you had, I think you've written something about this in like article. I didn't know there was a book coming up.
Yes, my co-author and I are right in the middle of it. We've got about 6 chapters done and another 5 or 6 half done and another 5 or 6 we're just sort of, plotting about.
Right. And is this you and Peter Lothian Nelson again?
Yes, he was my co-author on the Oceans book and Oceans, Rivers, Lakes, Aquifers, and he will be my co-author on this book. And as I say, we're really in the midst. We're now sending chapters back and forth to each other to add to and edit, and that's our process of co-authoring. So this fits perfectly in.
Great, great. Dear audience, I've just put the link to that new book on privatizing oceans in the chat room for you there. Okay, so what about the basics? When you're just a stranded astronaut on Mars, imagine nobody else's stuff is there. Can he like claim ownership over the whole planet? Can he do anything he wants to anywhere on Mars? Can he blow up the whole planet to get back home? What are the limits for him?
Well, I would say that we should apply to Mars or to the moon or to Venus or the moon of Ganymede or whatever moon, libertarian principles. Libertarian principles do pretty well on the Earth, and why should we give them up when we go to other worlds? And I just wanted to say that our book is unique. Well, not unique, because there is one other author that I found out who agrees with us on this, or who said it first, actually, and that is, why should we go to Mars and the moon? And one of our reason is because we're afraid that human beings are going to blow each other up, and we're going to have a nuclear war that'll kill everybody on Earth. And if we have colonies on the moon and Mars, then at least some human beings will survive, and we're very pro-human. We like human beings, and we like our species to survive. So that's not really unique, because there is one other author that I found that said that. Where we're unique is that we insist that it should only be done through private enterprise, big surprise. Whereas in our literature review, none of the other books say that. You know, NASA is fine, and we've got a whole chapter on, you know, why we should tar and feather NASA. Okay, so we don't really have to go to Mars. We can just say let's say you're the first guy in Australia, or and there are no Aborigines, or you're the first guy on I don't know, South America, and there's no one there, and at one time there's no one there, and the Lockean, Hoppian, Rothbardian, Blockian, Kinsellian, libertarian theory is you don't get to own the whole thing. And you only get to own that stuff that you homestead. Now, we have a continuum problem of, you know, how much do you homestead, how intensive does it have to be? And Murray's answer is, well, it depends upon the culture. East of the Mississippi, where it's more fertile, you don't need quite that much, and you have to homestead more intensively. West of the Mississippi, where it's not as fertile, you need more land in order to survive. Instead of, say, 160 acres, you might need 1,600 acres. But there's a limit as to how much you can get, and there's also continuum. Do you have to plant corn every square inch, every square half foot, every square foot, every square yard, one plant per acre? And there is no real solution to the continuum problem. It's sort of like, you know, statutory rape. We know that if you go to bed with a 5-year-old girl, you're a statutory rapist, even if she agrees, because we don't think that she's capable of agreeing. You go to bed with a 25-year-old woman, and if she agrees, we think she's very capable of agreeing or not. But what about a 15-year-old or a 14 or a 16? There's no one, you know, you can't say, well, it's 15 years and 2 months or something. And the answer for this would be courts, hopefully private courts. And I think that the history that Murray Rothbard lays out is that east of the Mississippi, the culture, the practice was 160 acres roughly to a customer, and the mistake of the government was they imposed that west of the Mississippi, where it was improper. Now, Mars is more like the Sahara Desert in terms of fertility and water availability, so you could be a little less intensive, but you don't get to own the whole moon, rather the whole Mars. My understanding is that the surface of Mars is equal to the surface of the Earth minus the oceans.
Right.
In other words, 1/4 Mars land on Mars is about the same as land on the Earth.
Okay.
And the idea that you could own all of the land on Earth is preposterous. So look, he didn't. The actor in this film, he didn't go all around Mars. He went, you know, a couple of square miles. And he didn't really grow anything. You can't grow anything there. But, you know, he mixed his labor with the land. And, you know, he gets to own a square mile or 2 or 3. And I'm not sure whether it's 2.3 square miles or 3.2 square miles. But it's something reasonable, much, much less than all of Mars, and much, much more than like 1 acre, because you need more to survive on Mars because it's unhospitable. So that would be one answer to one question.
Right. Okay, but let's imagine, just arguendo, that he develops some kind of fusion technology where he can consume the whole planet of Mars in a reaction, and as a result, give himself the power to fly back home. So let's imagine that he could destroy the whole planet of Mars in order to achieve his goal of getting home alive. Is he allowed to do that? Like the rest of humans don't have any say over what happens on the whole planet of Mars, if he can really use it for his purposes?
Well, let's abstract from the fact that there were other astronauts there.
Right.
And let's also abstract from the fact that NASA sent them, which makes it more complicated for the Liberty.
Right.
Let's suppose he just went there on his unicycle with a a spacesuit.
Right.
Well, he's the only one who's I think he could blow up the place, provided that it wouldn't impact negatively us Earthlings. This is a little unrealistic, but since you're going arguendo, and I'll follow you to the ends of the earth arguendo, sure, if it was to save his life, which is very, very unlikely that he'd have to blow up all of Mars. Blow up all of Mars, probably he would die in the conflagration. But I don't see any principled reason why he couldn't do it. He would be using it to save his life, and that would be the only way he could get back to Earth, I suppose. But in any realistic situation, people say, Columbus, let's say there were no native Indians in the U.S. when Columbus came, and people say, well, he claimed everything he could see. And let's say he got up on top of an elephant or something, so you could see a little bit more. I mean, how much can you see from the top of an elephant? Just, I don't know, a mile or two, a square mile, or 10 square miles or something. So I think, apart from these science fiction-ish arguendo cases, the realistic assessment is people would get to own a bit of the moon or a bit of Mars, not the whole thing, because you don't get anywhere by blowing it up. I think that's
right. But what about, let's say I flew to Mars. Let's assume nobody else has been to Mars, and let's assume nobody else has been to the moon, and I go to the moon. I'm the first person on the moon, and I get there on my unicycle. NASA's not involved. But my goal for the moon is not to plant crops. What I want is to put a giant Coca-Cola advertisement on Mars. And I've been paid by Coca-Cola, and I'm going to make myself fabulously wealthy. I'm doing this on the moon. So am I allowed, like the moon, everybody sees it in the night sky, people use it to write romantic songs and seduce each other. Can like the first guy who gets to the moon just paint the whole moon red and white in a Coca-Cola sign?
Well, I don't see why not. He's the first guy there. He's not ruining it. He's not blowing it up now. We're off that scenario.
Right.
And you can't own views.
You can't own views.
Because if you could own views, look, suppose I own a view, and I don't like the way you part your hair. I now see you, and your hair isn't parted the way I like it. And if I own a view of you, then we have a conflict in property rights, because you'll say, well, the hell with you, Walter. I'm parting my hair the way I damn well please. And
this way.
I don't have that problem. I have an automatic part.
I think I have a view of myself on your head, actually.
Okay. That's a good one. You can't own a view in libertarian theory, because owning a view would mean a necessary conflict in property rights. And one of the essences, or one of the bases of all of libertarianism is that there's no conflict in property rights. So if you own views, then there's a conflict, because I own a view of your house, and I don't like the way your house is painted. It's painted green. I want you to paint your house pink, and you say no, green is fine, and now we have a conflict, because my rights conflict with your rights. So you can't own a view, and you're coming up with weird arguendo cases, which I admire. I think that's good. This is a little extreme. Probably Coca-Cola wouldn't do that, because a lot of people would be ticked off at Coca-Cola.
Bad advertising, yeah.
And, all the couples looking at the moon, and now all they see is Coca-Cola. And they're going to say, well, I'll never buy Coke again. So ruined my engagement plan. Right. So as a practical matter, probably they wouldn't do it. Although they might put a little sign. I don't know.
Periodic holographs on the moon. Okay. So what about this second issue of abandonment? Let's put the other astronauts back in the picture. There's actually 5 other astronauts in the story, but they've all left, and they left their stuff behind. They left books and food and all kinds of stuff. And again, let's leave NASA out and just assume it's their private stuff. Can he just take all that stuff and eat all their food? He can't talk to them, so he can't ask them for permission. Can he just take their stuff?
This reminds me of the thing. What was that movie where the guy was doing the Heil Hitler sign and then he had to keep pulling it down? Vital bodily fluids. Oh, I forget the name of the movie. It's a very, very famous movie. In any case, the following scenario came up. Peter Sellers was in it. A very, very famous movie. I just can't think of the name of it. At the end, one guy gets on a bomb and he's going to bomb Russia.
Okay. How I stopped worrying and learned to love the bomb.
That's it. I think that's it. In any case, there was this scenario where in order to save the world, they had a telephone. This is before cell phones. They had to telephone the president of the United States to tell Russia, I'm sorry, or something. I forget what it was.
Okay.
And they had no change. And there was a coin booth. And then there was, speak of it, a Coca-Cola machine. And in the Coca-Cola machine, there was change. And so one character says, let's shoot the Coca-Cola machine and we'll get the change. We'll call the president and we'll save the world. And the other guy said, what? No, you can't do that. It's private property. So my solution to this is, look, shoot the goddamn machine, save the world, and pay the penalty. Now, how serious is the penalty? Okay, so you broke the Coca-Cola machine. It's a couple of $100. You stole a few quarters. You have to pay that. And okay, so now get back to the case where 5 people went there and now 4 left and 1 is left. And can he use the belongings of the other guys? It's a crime. Yeah, he's stealing. They haven't abandoned it, although we could get out of this by saying they'd abandoned it. But let's take the worst case scenario. They haven't abandoned it. Okay. So he steals their stuff, and he has to pay the penalty. You know, he took their shirts, so he has to pay 2 shirts or whatever the private court says. And it's not that big a penalty. So what I'm trying to do is obviate these cases like shooting the Coca-Cola machine to save the world, and using the cabin or the life raft of somebody else to save your life, or the lifeboat. See, these are the cases that are brought up against libertarians, and they say, see, in lifeboat situations, your crappy private property rights have to disappear, and there has to be something more important. And what I'm trying to do is save libertarianism against these charges.
And I see that you're doing it not by changing the principles, but by showing that the way the principles work out is not so abhorrent.
Right. Namely, I'm trying to have my cake and eat it. I'm trying to save the world and keep private property rights.
Right.
The other way is, you see, what they're doing, our critics are in effect saying, and you're being the devil's advocate here, I'm sure, our critics are saying, you see, you can't have private property rights. Private property rights are okay ordinarily, but in these lifeboat situations, you have to jettison them. And I'm saying, no, we don't have to ever jettison them. We keep them. We have our cake and eat it. We have our property rights cake, and we have our lives. Eat it. We can eat the cake too. The idea here is, yes, shoot the bloody Coke machine, grab the lifeboat, grab the cabin in the wilderness. When there's the interesting case is if the cabin in the wilderness has a booby trap and you open the door and he shoots you. I mean, you're not the only one who goes arguendo. This is a Rothbardian tradition, and what happened in that case. And I would say that the guy with the booby trap has to say booby trap, and if he doesn't, then he has to put a sign up on the whatever. But now, is this a positive obligation? And now we get into all sorts of other problems. Which we could do, but we have other questions that we want to do, and we've only got 10 more minutes.
Yeah, so I think we might already be hitting that third question, though, which is, I was asking, in general, is there a lifeboat situation exemption for a property rights theory? I remember Rothbard's section about this, and this is what you're saying, that there's no exemption, but the way they work out, the way the theory itself works out is not so counterintuitive or not so awful.
Right, that's it. There is no exemption. Property rights, uber alles, property rights. And what Murray says is that if there's a lifeboat and there are 5 people and only 1 can live or whatever it is, well, who owns the bloody thing? let that person get the lifeboat. And if he's not there, let him pick who should live and who shall die. And if the lifeboat has been abandoned or nobody knows who owns it, then you go to homesteading. The first 2 people who reach it are the owners of it, and the next 3, assuming that the lifeboat can only support 2 people, and there are 5 people, well, then the next 3 are plumb out of luck. So we have a criteria, and we don't have to jettison private property rights or libertarianism.
Okay. So now I'm interested in the lifeboat theory. Let's imagine that all the astronauts are stranded on Mars, and they have like a rescue craft that will take them home. There's 6 astronauts, but the craft will only take 2 astronauts. I was just surprised when you said that the first 2 people who reach the life-saving device own it. I thought it would be the first guy owns it. First guy who gets that life-saving device owns it, and then because he could claim that I'm going to operate this as a for-profit enterprise of saving people's lives. I mean, can't I just be the first guy into the rescue ship and say, aha, whoever can pay me $100 will get into my life ship?
I misspoke. I stand corrected. The first guy, look, I made a mistake. I thank you for correcting me. The first guy who gets it owns it, and he can choose who the second guy is, assuming that the lifeboat only takes 2 people. And he could say whoever pays me the most money, or the prettiest girl, or whatever criteria he wants to use, because it's his lifeboat.
Wow. I think we're just going to note that in the time logs for Liberty.me, the moment at which Mike corrected Walter Block.
Look, it happens. We're only human. I'm speaking extemporaneously. I had a slip of the tongue, and
I think I get like a merit badge. I think I'm going to get like a little something on my chest now, or a medal for that one.
Why not? I'll print up a special merit badge.
Wow. Okay. So
I just wanted to say one thing.
Go ahead.
In this, I follow Murray Rothbard. When Murray Rothbard started writing about the basis of libertarianism, he started with natural rights. Right. And then Hans Hoppe came over from Germany, and Hans was a young pup kid. I don't know how old he was, 25 or so when he came, and Murray was like 50, 55. And Hans had this other theory, not natural rights, but the argument from argument. And you'd expect that Murray, who was the leader of the libertarian group, would say, well, I'm right and Hans is wrong. Instead, Murray said, Hans is right. My explanation was, is okay, but his is excellent. And then Murray started defending Hans against the critics of Hans. So I like to model myself after Murray in everything. And Murray was generous with credit, and I'm trying to be generous with you. I misspoke. You corrected me. I'm not going to die, That's why they put erasers at the back end of pencils, and I thank you for your correction.
Fantastic. That's actually the clip we're going to show from this evening. But hang on. Now, I guess I hadn't really figured out, we're kind of going adrift from the show premise, but are you saying that you actually agree with Rothbard's agreement with Hoppe? Somehow I thought you were always a natural rights guy and not an argumentation.
No. Look, I disagree with Murray on some things, and I disagree with Hans on some things. I regard both of them as friends and mentors, even though Hans is a little younger than me. I think he's brilliant. But, he and Murray and I disagree on some things. For example, I'm an open borders guy. Both of them think that immigration without permission is trespass. I disagree with Murray on abortion. Murray is a pro-life person. I'm an evictionist. So, we have differences. We have disagreements. But I revere the 2 of them. I think they're brilliant. I think they're creative and brilliant exponents of libertarianism. We just don't agree on everything. What the heck? These are complex issues that we face, and hopefully dialogue will get us closer to agreement.
Right, or at least closer to the truth anyway. And it's almost I think it's a Zeno's paradox problem of approaching truth. You never quite get there.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think we do. I believe in synthetic a prioris. I think that there are apodictically true statements that of course, what is it? Descartes says we might be dreaming or something like that, barring that sort of stuff.
Right.
I think, 2 plus 2 is 4 and the Pythagorean theorem are correct. And
Okay.
I don't think we approach them asymptotically, which is, I think, what you're getting at. I think we've got the truth on that, and we know that voluntary trade benefits both parties, and each party values what he's receiving more than what he's giving. And we know the minimum wage creates unemployment for unskilled workers. So we do know things absolutely, and not just tentatively, I think.
Well, Walter, I realize now that I misspoke. I shouldn't have used Zeno's paradox. So I will graciously acknowledge that in this matter, you have corrected me.
You have to give me a merit badge.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Walter, we got to start wrapping it up. Walter, it's been just wonderful having you on. Lots of fun to talk with you about the Martian, property rights on Mars. And furthermore, I'm really looking forward to the new Walter Block book. Does it have a working title?
Something like Privatize Oceans, Rivers, Lakes, and Mud Puddles.
Right, that's the existing one, but the one about space.
We don't even have a title yet. I guess Privatize the Moon, Mars, and the Space Probe or something, or Privatize Space. I'm not sure about the title. I'm open for suggestions.
Okay, well, we could do a poll. We could do a poll on Liberty.me on what to call it.
Another merit badge if you come up with a good name based on your poll.
Okay, fantastic. So the way I like to wrap up, as always, is I want to tell people where to get more neat Walter Block stuff, including the new water capitalism book, Privatizing Oceans and Aquifers. I think Ocean Rivers and Aquifers. And I also will tell people how to get to more Liberty.me live stuff. In fact, there's a show coming right after this in just about 2 minutes. So here we go. Where to get more Walter Block. Famously, we had a really great episode with Walter and Sheldon on serious issues of libertarian and left libertarian theory. And I'm going to give you guys that link because that is an exchange of enduring value that has both a video and then a lengthy email exchange between Walter and Sheldon. And that's a really wonderful one. Second thing I want to show you guys is the book Walter's probably best known for is Defending the Undefendable. This is the link for volume 1. There's also a volume 2 you should know about. But also, there's the new book from Walter. He says just came out last week. Here it is, Water Capitalism, the case for privatizing oceans, rivers, lakes, and aquifers. There it is. Fantastic. So that's where to get more great Walter Block stuff. I also want to tell you guys about 2 things coming up on Liberty.me Live. One is that this Sunday, we have Liberty Classics with Jeffrey Tucker, where he's going to be talking about the denationalization of money. So he's coming off of Hayek's book. So that's an enjoyable on 8 Eastern this Sunday. And right now, about 2 minutes from now, Lucy Steigerwald is got her Politics for People Who Hate Politics. And she's got Jeffrey and Sheldon on. The whole crew is coming together tonight to talk about the question, is chivalry dead? Which is spinning off of Jeffrey's recent somewhat controversial article about the sort of not quite libertarian obligations, but social obligations of men versus women. So I hope you guys will enjoy that one too. Walter, it's been great talking to you. I'll turn it over to you to have the last word before we close up for the night.
The last word is always fun. I look forward to the next one. Take care.
Great. Have a great night, Walter. Good night, everybody. I'll see you again soon on Liberty.me Live.